afternoon, everyone. You're all hungry, right? What would you give for us to wrap this up in like 25 to 30 minutes stat? What do we get? यार इसमें तो मेरी भी भूख नहीं पूरी हुई थोड़ा जोर से Thank you so much. And I know you're all hungry. Lunch is already served. But there's been so much of discussion since morning on different technology platforms. Technology is a given. It's here. But somehow the way the narrative around it goes. So for example, if you read somewhere, X number of people laid off by XYZ organization because of AI transformation, because digital, because this, what does it do to our people? How are they feeling about it? How are they feeling about the technology adoption, which is a given, as I said. So this panel discussion, and I've got some great leaders here, and you will hear about 7 stories from them. Now, what we've done is that given that technology adoption is something that we have to do to be more effective, be more efficient, have higher productivity, what does it mean for our leaders? What does it mean for our people? What does it mean for our culture? What does it mean for our structures? So that is what we are going to focus on in this session. And I have also requested my panel members that to share practical examples. Theory to chat GPT वगैरह से मिल जाएगा, but practical examples is something that they would be sharing. So are we good to go? Talia? Okay. So my first question is to Joseph. And Joseph, today it's for you're from a very large organization and complex. And have you really seen technology adoption, digitization impact organization structures, reduce hierarchy, flatten them? And what has been your experience related to people?
Yeah, thanks, Sonika, and great to be here. Yes, I'll start with a yes to the answer, but there are a lot of nuances to it. I come from a very large organization, 350,000 people globally spread out. Time zones are the bigger problem than geographies, but anyways, so that's the organization I work for. Answer is yes, but I don't think it is as dramatic as what the headlines say. Okay, last year in July, we did a vibe coding exercise, okay, for all the fashionable folks here. I didn't know what it meant, but I was part of it, vibe coding. Long story short, our organization is in the Guinness Book right now. Okay, so we had 50,000 associates sign up. Essentially, we gave them AI-assisted tools, licenses, free of cost to these 350,000 associates. 50,000 associates participated, 20,000 use cases were created, prototypes generated. We are in the Guinness Book. The challenge that we had is I don't know what happened to the other 300,000. They didn't participate. So they are in trouble. But, what happened out of that, we took some of these prototypes and we took it to the technology team and we showed them how, we can automate and drive some productivity into it. And I can tell you the experience was that I wouldn't say hierarchies changed or flattening happened. But what did change was that we figured that we may not necessarily need the number of people who manage shared services activities, execution-related tasks, that could reduce. Okay? Now, I know you're HR folks, leaders, we all are. You're looking at me, what happened to those people? That's what you're wondering. No, they're safe. They're working in other technology areas and different things have happened. Okay? So nothing bad happened. Now, when I did a little bit of digging into this subject as to whether it is as dramatic as the headlines say, I don't think so. Hierarchies have been impacted, yes. If you look at it, classic IT consulting and services organizations, they have that very fancy pyramid, talent pyramid. I think now if you look at that as a 3-layer pyramid, now it's more like an oblix, which is, the bottom 2 layers of the 3-layer pyramid, they're almost the same in breadth. Which means the execution layer has reduced, you don't need that many people. So there are some impact there. So I don't think it's about reshaping or rather work changing. But the shape of work is definitely changing when it comes to hierarchy and when it comes to, these layering and all of that. Number two, I think there's a big difference between adoption and transformation, right? I think Deloitte went ahead to say that almost 80% of the organizations that they interviewed have actually adopted AI in different shapes and forms, driving productivity very clearly. But only one third of that 80% has actually scaled it and led to hierarchy changes, which essentially means that there might be limitations around how much of adoption that you see today turns into transformation. Maybe it is just driving efficiency with a very powerful branding team behind them that makes it seem like AI did everything. Okay? And number three, I am not a big fan of saying that flatten everything. I don't think that's even possible, right? In fact, McKinsey has written an article that spoke about the great flattening. You should read that. Very interesting, very scary, and probably not so true. Nobody from McKinsey here, right? Don't tell them that, huh? But anyways, that's just my philosophy, because I think you are HR, we all are HR. You know, when something goes wrong, they need to point fingers at someone. Most of the time it is us, but anyways, that will happen. You still need people, you still need the layers, you still need hierarchies. Yes, certain execution level roles will look and feel different, and there are ways in which that is being managed. That's my perspective and my experience so far.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because there is reality and there is hype, right? And sometimes I think वो होता है ना सनसनी case, everybody needs a headline that reads and gets clicks. So sometimes I think we also need to differentiate between that. So thank you, Anthony. What I'm hearing from you is adoption versus transformation. And also the fact that there is a reality and there is hype. So these are 2 points that we should, and I'll also circle back to some of the conversations we had in the morning with Asha, with Mrigank, as we go along. So now let me come to you, Lakshmi, and with greater technology adoption across functions, he spoke about how, all those people from shared services, execution, they are still working, they're possibly doing something else. But what is really changing for people, for talent? Because are we really ready with managers who can handhold people through this transition? There might be resistance, there might be fear, and what is really needed to prepare everyone?
Hi, good afternoon. I just want to narrate this incident that I was a part of a year back, a couple of years back in an organization. This was basically a performance improvement discussion for somebody in a AI COE team. It was a then digital, and now it's, of course, we call it by multiple names. So the manager, it was a tripartite discussion. It was the employee. Employee was about 10 years of experience. You had the manager, a guy with a lot of patents and a lot of stuff. And then it was me, who was the HR advisor trying to moderate the discussion. He was completely prepared. So this was not even a mid-year or an annual discussion. It was a performance improvement discussion to communicate to the employee that you're not making the cut. So I had a pre-discussion with the manager, and I kind of spoke about, talk about the outcomes and the gaps, and don't get into the other nitty-gritties, right? The typical kind of coaching kind of discussion that you give. So, but this manager comes into the room, and he's got this very hostile kind of a face, and the employee looks very comfortable. I mean, she's a little disoriented, but she's kind of comfortable. And he talks everything other than the outcomes and the goals. So he says things like, you're supposed to come 3 days, but I see that in the last 1 month you have not shown up, you've not been regular, your hours are not clogged, you seem to be traveling, you're not in the base location, and all of that. And she obviously was prepared, at least her body language was very confident and stuff like that. And she said, these are the things I have delivered. And this is how I've contributed to one of the patents that you had registered for 6 months ago. So clearly the conversation was more about where he was thrusting on hygiene and she was talking about outcomes. And between the two, I'm sure all of us have now guessed who was more prepared to have that conversation. Coming back to the point that you're trying to say, See, the talent, I think, and I don't want to give them labels of Gen Z, Gen Y, etc. But when you fast forward, forget about 5 years or 10 years from now, even the current reality and 2 years from now also, they are very well informed, they're very sorted, and I'm sure we've heard this many times about the purpose that they want to find. So if I'm coming to work and I'm going to deliver an outcome that is at least satisfying to me and it's aligned to what I'm signed up for, then that's the ROI, right? And as far as the managers, when you're talking about, of course, in the org charts, we are going to see digital workers plus human-centric workers. We've seen that in a few organizations. Many organizations are trying to experiment that. So I think the manager, I think you also spoke about the emotional intelligence part, right? So how do I be less focused on tasks and more focused on, how do I connect the team members' focus to the org's purpose? If I'm joining an organization, and it's not only that great impression that you make, in the pre-boarding or the first month, that has to stay even after a month, a year, 2 years, etc. And that purpose, connection, and alignment is very, very important. And I think manager's role is very important because for me, when I come to work, it's the ecosystem that I experience, and it's largely created virtual, hybrid, offline, call it whatever, right? It's about the ecosystem that I experience, and the manager plays the central part of it. So I think that is where we see the gap, and that's where I think the managers need to improve.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi. I think that was a brilliant example. I have seen it play out many times similarly, where data is being used for some reason, but outcome is not being looked at. So brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. Let me come to you, Roy. As decision making gets more distributed, right? We are talking about enablement, empowerment, that shift is happening with data. How do you ensure that accountability does not get diluted? And what really helps in keeping accountability sharp?
Thank you.
You can take this.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Sonika. The way I see it is in multi-layer, three-pronged approach, I would say. One is accountability is not on the output that the AI systems give. And you just don't say that, okay, let's say an employee of ours has created an outcome, an output, and has shared it with us. The accountability does not lie with that person, probably by the lead or probably by his manager. So the accountability has to be against some individual. So that's very important from an AI standpoint. The second is, how do you decide the accountability? It shouldn't be based on titles. For instance, he or she is an HR manager, HR lead. It shouldn't be based on that. It should be based on your metrics. So you kind of break it down, say that this is the particular metrics. Let's say this is your KRA. This is what you're accountable for. And you need to achieve this using AI as such, right? So that way the accountability does not just always lie with someone as the lead, but clearly calling out outcomes like what she said. The outcomes are important here. You're giving accountability to the outcome, not to the whole process itself.
Can you possibly give an example or an instance where you were able to drive this?
Yeah. So for instance, we have accountability. Let's say a lot of you are from recruiting here. If you have to say, bring down the time to hire,
Yeah.
okay, and that's one of your KPIs. Now, the AI systems will suggest you multiple ways of doing this. Okay, and what I would suggest and all of us to do is just go back, put on the AI system saying that this is my problem, this is what could the solutions be. It will throw out a lot of solutions for you. Now, what you do with it is very important, and how you action it is very important. Once you do that, and the outcome that comes out of it is what you need to take and what you need to action on. And that's the person who's accountable to meet that particular outcome. And finally, it is also the whole bit is you need to have you need to understand that speed in this whole process, right, is also not associated with, accuracy. So a lot of us make this big mistake with, with AI, saying that let's wait, let's make it completely foolproof. Let's make it like a Six Sigma, But AI is not that way. AI is agile. You need to keep looking at it in that
Yeah.
sense, and then go ahead and adopt it.
Super, thank you. Some of the key takeaways from what Roy just spoke, and I think this was captured also in the morning. Is it about AI effectiveness, or is it about HR effectiveness or business effectiveness? Are we looking at the right metrics and then working backwards on what should be the solution that we adopt? That is one, and something which has come out beautifully is speed is not equal to accuracy. And lastly, I wanted to bring out a point. When we sometimes, when I'm doing a session or speaking to a client, I think some of the words like accountability, ownership, and responsibility are used interchangeably, whereas they are not the same thing. They mean very, very different things. And I think with AI coming in, it is very important that we are very clear that who is really accountable, who is responsible, and who is owning it. And that is where I think role of HR becomes really big. So with that, let me move to Satish. And Satish, agile pods. So there is a new buzzword. How many of you are working with agile pods? If you could just raise your hands. Okay, very
Okay,
few.
great, yeah. Agile
Great.
pods. So
Yeah.
pod is a group of whales. So you're working with a very strong agile group of whales. Okay, so just the context, why agile pods? Okay, 3 data points. Fortune 500 companies, half-life of a Fortune 500 companies. How long does it take for 50% of the Fortune 500 companies to fall off the list? 1960 was 75 years. In 1990s was 30 years. Today it is less than 15 years. And in 2026, they're going to say 7 years. So the list of these Fortune 500 companies, the next 7 years, 50% of them will fall off the list. Okay, that's one data point. We're going back to why agile pods. The second data point is that in the World Economic Forum, we said that 40% of the skills are going to change in 2027. Okay, and the last data point is that 30% of the work is going to get automated. Okay, you will not lose jobs, but the task that you're going to do, 30% of them will get automated. So these agile pods, okay, why agile pods? If you go back to agile pods, all of you do agile pods. It's cross-functional teams. Okay, so HR needs jobs. So every 5 years, we'll keep changing terminologies. So cross-functional teams are called agile pods. Okay, that's our secret. So let's keep doing that. Okay, so let's continue with that changing of terminologies because we need to sound different. Okay, so what are CEOs looking for? What are leaders looking for? Okay, because of the 3 data points, we're looking for speed, we're looking for innovation, we're looking for what else we're looking for? Okay, we're looking for clarity, we're looking for accuracy. Okay, so when you go back to pod, okay, it's again the word. Okay, I did some research on pod. Okay, it's some project-oriented delivery.
Oh, I thought it was a pea pod.
No, it's project-oriented delivery. And in this project-oriented delivery, we are looking at holistic goals. Okay, the goal that, I'll give an example of our agile pod. The goal for a recruiter is what? Time to delivery, okay, time to recruit. The better metric is time to proficiency. Okay, when looking at time to proficiency, then I'll bring in people together. I'll bring in an HR guy, I'll bring an operation guy, I'll bring in a technology guy. Okay? And with this team, we'll decide that, guys, okay, so if I recruit 4 people, how many of them are achieving their proficiency in the end of 6 months? Okay? If I recruit 4 people, what is the cost of achieving the proficiency? Okay? So that's the whole question of agile pods. Okay? So this cross-functional team is very, very good in software. Okay, you can get the coder and you can get the product guy and the tester together and run it. But this can't be scalable. I've done this. We are a AI/ML enablement company. So in one of the places, I've used this agile pod, okay, cross-functional team, to deliver decent results for me, okay? But I find it's not scalable. The best way is through hierarchies, okay? And in my previous life, I headed HR for 30,000 employees. And we had some of the teams, we had 9 layers, okay? So, and why do we have hierarchies? We believe that each hierarchy has a competency difference, okay? And that's why we have hierarchy. But we found out that because we have these large hierarchies that is there, okay, from the CEO to the person doing the job, the agility is lost. So we go back to a cross-functional team. So the whole question is that how can we reduce the number of hierarchies? How can we have 3, 4 people from the CEO to the bottom so that things are agile? How can we, the biggest competency, I have 14 more minutes, no? Okay, the biggest, last minute, okay, the biggest competency needed for people is learnability, okay? I'll just leave that thought with Sonika because you're raising her hand and saying your time's over, okay? So how do we get learnability? Because 15% of the people in this room have high learnability. 15% of CEOs have high learnability. Okay? And once we have when we have a larger team with high learnability, we don't need agile pods, we'll have agile teams. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What I loved was the shift from the buzzword to getting down to brass tacks and saying that what exactly is an agile pod. The fact is that every agile pod will work with an outcome and they will have one CEO. But how do we scale it if there is a gap in learnability? So that is where the challenge lies, and that is where, Tanmay, let me bring you in. From a business standpoint, these smaller cross-functional teams, whether you call them pods or CFTs, where have you seen them really drive outcomes, improved outcomes, better outcomes? They could be in the space of customer satisfaction, better productivity, revenue increase, profitable, whatever you take. So give us an example.
Okay, so let me give so I'm been into consumer goods space throughout my career, FMCG, and though we are not using very upgraded terms like agile pods, but yeah, we are doing something in this space, and I've seen it in my current organization as well as some of my traditional FMCG organizations. See, what is happening because of these D2C brands and new age brands, there are a lot of companies who are more focusing on the channel specific proposition. There are a lot of brands who are only selling into quick commerce and e-commerce nowadays. Now it's very difficult for a traditional FMCG brand to compete with these guys. I think they are becoming laggards sometimes. They might be excellent in terms of GT space, in terms of market share and the recognition, but obviously nobody can be left out. If tomorrow, if you are not, it's not about reaction. You have to be proactively ensuring that your customers are also getting change. So to give you an example, I've seen some of the organizations who are traditionally very strong in GT, when they wanted to operate in the modern trade or let's say e-commerce or quick commerce space. Traditional rule book is you have to ask key accounts manager, go there, make the TOT, try to have some placement, have some particular activation. Honestly speaking, it is not working out. I don't want to quote some of the very most mature brands, they are really actually struggling. So what is happening nowadays, it's a cross-functional thing in line with the way you said agile pods. So there are a lot of other cross-functional teams where they are deciding 3 things. First, I should be very clear what product mix I want to go for this exclusive channel. Because nowadays a lot of quick commerce are also expecting a value proposition which should be very exclusive to them. That is the first part. Second is how to ensure that this particular TOT are becoming customized and it should be able to really create impact. And third part, the most important part is the supply chain side of it, whether you are really able to pull the fill rate percentage, you are able to do this justice or not. I've seen it when you are having a synchronization between these 3 things. Not only revenue has been increased, but I can say the stockout situation, I have not seen stockout situation at all. And the most important point, there is a very decent amount of high visibility, which is possible on this part. So I think this is a real life case, and obviously it has worked well. That's it from my side.
Thank you so much, Tanmay. That makes absolute sense because you have, and I think that was very similar to what Satish said. That if I have to look at time to proficiency, and Tanmay is saying pretty much the same thing. Do I have synchronization or clarity in what are the outcomes that I'm trying to drive? I might be using technology in my pod, I might be using coding, I might be using AI apps, but end of the day, am I getting the desired result? So thank you so much for that. Sudeep, we've spoken of structures, we've spoken of agile pods, we've spoken of, even what it means for talent. But help us understand what it means for HR.
Sure, sure.
And there are a lot of HR BPs here, so please listen
Yeah.
to this answer.
Yeah, as I start, there are a lot of anxious and hungry faces. So let me first give two news and one bad news, two good news and one bad news. So the first good news is this is going to end in 6 minutes. So that's how far you're from the lunch. Okay. The second good news is 25 years back when I was in college, I heard computers are going to come, everybody's going to lose job. Then came RPA, then came whatever, every form of super tech, all of you guys are employed. And eventually, people have found new professions that we have never heard of. Okay, so that's the second good news. Now the bad news. And that's to answer what she asked. See, and let me also, address the elephant in the room. Technology, super tech, AI, these are all here. Okay, that is going to happen anyway. The question is whether HR is going to lead it or HR is going to be reactive to it. That's the only question. Okay. Now, if you, as HR, if you are all going to be ready for it, then what is needed? One, of course, we all need to know the, role economics. If there is a role in the organization, there's a cost of that role. Now, your technology implementation, we all need to know that if technology implementation, is it going to reduce the cost or it is going to increase the cost. And we can't be protective always about a role or, or somebody in the role. Secondly, important is the role structures. If a role exists because of complexity, then you know that role will not exist. If there is real work, then the role will exist. If it is low value work, the role exists because complexity, nobody else knows which steps to take, then technology will take over. So HR will have to facilitate that. Lastly, technology from a HR lens has been mostly about buzzword. If you go deeper and ask, how, why, all of it, I know at some point of time, who are not in real implementation or real design development, we'll all get stuck there. So getting to know what the technology is going to bring, okay, getting to know or getting ourselves prepared for the technology, how it is going to get implemented is critical. Because technology without real outcome, okay, promoted by HR is just expensive theater. Okay. So that's my take on this thing.
And, this something else, and we were speaking about it, Sudeep, in the break, which is about the conscience.
Yeah, I think that's an important part. That's very, very important. I know that's the softer aspect of it. But I think the approach needs to change. For very long, HR has been the conscience of the organization. Okay, and the way we all have interpreted the conscience to be is always, give a little emotional spin to the whole thing. Versus that, okay, if we really give our employees clarity, because no AI is going to work without human. That's not going to work out. Okay, so you will always need a human in the loop. Like one of our colleagues, he just mentioned, if HR's role doesn't become giving transparency of which are the skills you need to learn to run AI. Okay, I think that's the honesty we all need to bring in the profession, versus giving it an emotional spin.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. Some key takeaways that I'm hearing is that HR should lead the change. So knowing about the skills, the speed at which the skills need to be adapted to, and also doing the right thing. When you say clarity, maybe doing the right thing is extremely critical. Technology is here. How we use it is going to make all the difference. Coming to you, Debashish, we've spoken about here and now. Where do you see, in 3 to 5 years, what would be the top 3 leadership competencies that will really take organizations to the next level? And what is it that all the HR folks here should really look out for in their people?
Thanks, Sonika. Thanks for having me here. I can see only 2 minutes, so I'll make it short. So we are overcomplicating technology because when we talk about evolutions, what happens to the people who were in Stone Age moving to the Metal Age or Iron Age? Can we think or comprehend that in Indus Valley civilizations, having seed itself is a technology? Making curd, milk, and buttermilk out of, kind of paneer, buttermilk and curd out of milk itself is a technology. So when we're talking about technology, are we over indulging into the particular aspects of the technology or the digital side of the technology? So that is one aspect, keeping them apart. When in this context, because technology helps in making us better, more efficient, now we are creating a question that are we relevant in this scenario of AI-based technology? And that is the real question, what we are trying to address here. And maybe when we are looking back in the organizational scenario, the org structure might have changed. When we are discussing here, when we are doing our appraisals and all sort of things, maybe the AI is rewriting the org structure in a different context. Many of the roles may not be relevant because ultimately any role which is repetitive, which is kind of manual in nature, can be better done by technology or AI systems. Now in this scenario, what can be the competency which the organization must have? One of the things which I feel that in a VUCA world, in a SMAC world, whatever we are talking, dealing with ambiguity. Because how do you navigate ambiguity is a challenge when we are trying to look at from the larger perspective. So the kind of skill set, the kind of approach when we are trying to look at dealing in ambiguity, or let's say when we are talking about learning agility, or when we are talking about the scenario of how we need to deal, I had a bad throat yesterday.
You want water?
So in that scenario of how we deal with situations where learning is continuous, is a skill which is going to be there, but something we need to keep for not to change, like values, ethics of the organization.
Values and ethics.
So that is the things which we don't have to change. We need to foster that. I think with that, these are the 3 things which we can able to. Sorry.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you so much, Debashish. We've come to the end of our time, so I will take exactly 1 minute to summarize for all of you some of the key takeaways from this discussion. The first one is AI, technology, digital transformation, whatever you call it, is here. We need to separate the buzzword from reality and see what works for us. Focus on the outcomes. The data will be there provided we have fed in the right things. The data will be there, but how are we using it for the right outcomes, for the right deliverables? The third thing is build your managerial capability. The oldest Gen Z right now is 29 years old. In a lot of IT companies, they are already taking on TL roles. Are they ready? Are they really ready to drive the competencies that Debashish just spoke about? Learning agility, valuing the ethics, what is the right thing to do? Accountability, I think accountability is about the outcome, and then we spoke about ownership and responsibility. Speed is not accuracy. I think in today's time and age where data can be democratized and there is a lot of information, It is really about getting the desired outcomes. You can take another 1 week, 1 month, 2 months, but get it right. Impact, again, the half-life of Fortune 500 companies, that was a big one for me. And I think that also tells us that how fast the world of work is changing. You know, there was a time when I, got off campus and there used to be these list of companies that everybody used to die to get into. But it's no longer the same, right? So I think whoever will catch the tide or ride the wave is the one who's going to win. Tech makes us better, but we need to have a conscience. I think we have two major examples doing the rounds. I'm sure TCS had all the technology, but they are where they are. And Oracle also had all the technology, but I'm sure things could have been done differently. So with that, let's go for lunch.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful panel discussion. Now I would like to request Ms. Sonika Aaron to felicitate the panel members, starting with Joseph Anthony, Director HR from Cognizant. Next we have Roy Richard Rohan, Associate Director, Talent Acquisition from IQVIA. Satish. Tanmay Parekh. Lakshmi Raju. Sudeep Datta. Last but not the least, Debasish. So we hope you have been enjoying the 16th CHRO Confection Awards 2026 so far. So now we are taking a lunch break, which will last for 40 minutes. We encourage you to take this time to relax, recharge, and network with other attendees. And also, I request all the panel members to have a group photo. Please be sure to return promptly at the end of the break, as we have an exciting afternoon lined up with keynote presentation, panel discussion, and also the award ceremonies. See you in next 40 minutes. Thank you.